Welcome to your first math video. Today's lesson is in Chapter 3, Lesson 1. We are going to be talking about adding and subtracting decimals. You can follow along with me on page 177. On page 177, we are going to be doing problem number 1. It took Christine Magnuson 0.37 seconds longer to finish than Elizabeth Trickett. What was Magnuson's time in seconds? If you look at the chart above on your page, it has the women's 100-meter butterfly. That is where we're getting these times. So, setting these up, we need to know how to add these two decimals. When you add decimals, you need to make sure you line up the decimal points. That's the most important part of doing this. Once our decimal points are lined up like they are in this problem, we can go ahead and add. So 7 plus 3 is 10. 7 plus 3 is 10, plus 1 is 11. 6 plus 1 is 7. And 5 plus this would be a 0 is 5. So my answer is 57.10. You should have followed along with me in this problem and wrote it in your own textbook. This next example, you can follow along with me on page 178. This is letter A. So we want to add this decimal. Remember, to add decimals, we need to make sure we line up the decimals. So I'm going to put 54.7 plus, I need to line up the decimals, so I'm going to have 21.4. Notice my decimals here are lined up, so I know I did this problem correct. Once my decimals are lined up, I can go ahead and add. 7 plus 4 is 11. 4 plus 1 is 6. And 5 plus 2 is 7. Now that we lined our decimals up, we need to make sure we drop our decimal straight down. So when you do these problems, make sure your decimals line up. And when you're finished, you need to make sure you drop your decimal straight down. That's also something you can do at the beginning of the problem. So my answer would be 76.1. Your code word for today and this chapter are going to be farm animals. So your code for today is pig. So you can go ahead and write that down on your sheet of paper. You can follow along with me on page 177. We are going to be doing number 2. We are now going to be subtracting decimals. So just like adding, we need to make sure our decimals are lined up. Once our decimals are lined up, we can go ahead and just subtract. Notice they already dropped our decimal down, so we're good to go. So doing this, I just simply subtract. 4 minus 0 is 4. 3 minus 1 is 2. 2 minus 8 I cannot do, so I need to borrow. Leaving me with 12 minus 8, which is 4. The 7 turns into a 6, so I'm left with 6 minus 5, which is 1. Hopefully adding and subtracting is simple for you. You just got to add the decimals now. So my answer is going to be 14.24. For this problem, they are asking us to subtract our decimals again. So you can follow along with me on page 179. This is letter F. So to do this, we need to make sure our decimals line up. Now looking at the problem, we have the number 14. When I have the number 14, where is my decimal? Well, my decimal is right after the 14, and I can add as many zeros as needed. My next number, 9.09, I can write underneath the 14. Now notice that I had a whole number 14, so I put the decimal behind it and then made sure my decimals lined up. And I'm subtracting those. Your first or last step could be to drop down that decimal point. So make sure your decimals line up and then drop that decimal point down. So now we can solve it. Well, I can't do 0 minus 9, so I'm going to have to borrow. That turns to 10, the 0 turns to a 9. So I have 10 minus 9, which is 1. 9 minus 0, which is 9. And then once again, I can't do 4 minus 9. So I'm going to want to borrow again. So the 4 turns into 14, and the 1 turns into 0 because I'm borrowing. So now I have 14 minus 9, which is 5, leaving my answer as 5.91.